Have you ever spent hours studying for a test, only to forget almost everything by the next day? It's frustrating, isn't it? You feel like you've worked so hard, and yet, your brain seems to throw away all that effort. But here's the thing, it's not your fault. Your brain is actually wired to forget information that it doesn't think is important. That's how it makes space for new things. However, there's a secret that many students around the world know, especially in Japan, that allows them to remember everything they learn for years, even for life. And it's not about working harder or spending endless hours with textbooks. It's about learning smarter. Let's dive into the science behind memory, and I'll show you exactly how to make it work for you. In Japan, students memorize over 2,000 kanji characters and the symbols used in their writing system, and they remember them for their entire lives. That's no small feat. So how do they do it? Are they just born with better brains? No. The secret is that Japanese students use special techniques to make learning stick. And the best part is these methods aren't based on cramming or spending long hours buried in textbooks. They're based on understanding how our brains work and working with it. If you've ever found yourself cramming for exams, highlighting textbooks until your hands are sore, or reading through pages and pages of notes, only to realize you've forgotten most of it the next day, you're not alone. The truth is, traditional study techniques like rereading notes and highlighting paragraphs might feel productive, but they aren't effective in helping you remember. Because your brain treats them like background noise, much like how you scroll past Instagram ads without paying attention. It's easy to feel like you're doing everything right, but your brain simply isn't paying attention to what you're trying to learn. Here's where it gets interesting. There's something called the forgetting curve. It's a scientific principle that shows how quickly we forget what we learn. Within the first 24 hours, your brain will dump almost 70% of the information you've tried to memorize. By day 3, the number had dropped to nearly 90%. It's no wonder we can study for hours and still struggle to recall the information when we need it most. But don't worry, there is a way to fight this. Imagine if you could hack your brain to remember everything you study. What if you could learn more in less time and keep that knowledge for the long haul? Good news is you can. You don't need to study harder, you need to study smarter. The Japanese have been using simple, but highly effective techniques for centuries to help them master learning. These aren't about studying, they're about studying in a way that makes your brain retain information. Let's break down 5 science-backed study hacks that will help you learn more and remember it longer, without spending endless hours reading. Active recall. Most people focus on input reading, watching, highlighting, and absorbing as much information as they can. But here's the secret, memory strengthens through output. Think of your brain as a muscle. It gets stronger when you exercise it. The more you force your brain to retrieve information, the better you remember it. So, how do you practice this? It's simple. Close your book. Grab a blank sheet of paper and write down everything you remember about the topic you were studying. At first, this may feel frustrating and even difficult, but that's the whole point. Struggling to recall something forces your brain to build stronger connections. The more you recall, the better you get at remembering. When you use this technique, you're not failing, you're strengthening the pathways in your brain. Here's the truth, most Western students cram for exams, hoping to remember everything at once. But Japanese students take a different approach. They cultivate knowledge by constantly trying to recall information, not just review it. The more you use active recall, the more your memory becomes like a muscle. It grows stronger with every repetition. The Cumin method. Another powerful technique used by Japanese students is the Cumin method. Instead of trying to learn everything in one giant gulp, this method encourages breaking up your studies into small, manageable pieces. Each day, you tackle just a little bit, but consistently, until the material becomes second nature. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, writes about the power of small changes. He explains that by improving just 1% each day, you can see massive improvements over time. This method works because it's built on steady, gradual progress, not overwhelming yourself with tons of information. Little by little, your brain starts to understand and retain information without burning out. By studying in smaller chunks, you give your brain time to process and store what you've learned. Instead of cramming all night before the exam, you make learning a daily habit, a little every day, like watering a plant to help it grow. Over time, the result is that the knowledge sticks and becomes part of your long-term memory. Spaced repetition. The idea behind spaced repetition is simple but powerful. Imagine you're planting a tree. If you water it only once, it's not going to grow strong. But if you water it regularly, the tree gets stronger and more robust. Spaced repetition works the same way with your brain. Rather than cramming everything in one sitting, you space out your review sessions. For example, you might review something after 1 day, then again after 3 days, a week later, and then a month later. Every time you review, you're reinforcing your memory at just the right time right before you're about to forget it. The key is timing your reviews just before the memory starts to fade. Japanese students don't wait until the night before a test to start studying. They use systematic review to keep their knowledge fresh. This technique locks the information in, ensuring that you don't forget it. Kaizen. Japanese students also follow the philosophy of Kaizen, which is all about making continuous, small improvements every day. Instead of cramming or pulling all-nighters, Kaizen encourages steady progress, even if it's just 1% better each day. Over time, these tiny improvements compound into big results. The beauty of the Kaizen method is that it avoids the stress and burnout that often comes with trying to learn too much too quickly. In fact, you don't need to study for hours each day to see improvements. In just 1 month, you'll see that your knowledge has grown by 30%, and it won't feel stressful at all. Kaizen teaches us that small, steady steps lead to lasting progress. Zanshin. The final Japanese technique I want to share with you is called Zanshin, a deep state of focus and concentration. It's not just about the technique, it's about the mindset. In Japan, students practice this state of mind to help them become one with their task. To focus better, try creating rituals that signal to your brain that it's time to learn. For example, create a dedicated study space where distractions are minimized. Use the same pen every time you study, or light a candle to signal that it's time to focus. By turning your study time into a ritual, your brain starts to recognize it as important, and it becomes easier to stay focused and retain information. Learning doesn't have to be a struggle. You don't have to cram, highlight, and hope for the best. By using smarter study techniques like active recall, spaced repetition, the Kuman method, Kaizen, and Zanshin, you can study less and remember more. It's about making learning work with your brain, not against it. So, here's the question: will you continue with the same old cramming methods, or will you start using these smart study techniques today? The top 1% of students don't just read about these hacks, they put them into action. The choice is yours. Start small and make steady progress. Before you know it, you'll be mastering everything you study, without the stress and struggle. Try one of these techniques today, and see which one works best for you. Don't forget to subscribe for more tips on how to improve your productivity, boost your focus, and live a successful life. Change your life, one tiny step at a time.